The village of Oakhaven was a place of perpetual damp. It huddled in a valley carved by a lethargic river, where mist clung to the moss-covered stones like a shroud, and the sun was a shy visitor, a pale disk in the sky the color of whey. It was a place of mild climates and milder temperatures, a community that valued predictability above all else. And in their midst lived Adeline, a creature of stark and terrifying contrast. She was born with hair the color of a dying fire. A shocking crimson seemed to suck the green from the landscape around her. As a child, while others made daisy chains, Adeline could be found by the riverbank, her small hands hovering over sun-warmed stones where adders came to bask. The snakes, which sent other children screaming, would grow calm in her presence, uncoiling slowly, their patterned heads rising as if in silent greeting. She felt an affinity for them, for the latent power coiled within their muscular bodies, for the deadly promise held behind their fangs. They were like her, she thought, quiet, observant, and possessed of a secret fire. This fire was not metaphorical. The villagers had learned, through a series of increasingly alarming incidents, that Adeline's temper was a physical force. A merchant who tried to shortchange her found his coin purse smoldering in his hands. A boy who pulled her hair in the market square yelped as a searing heat. Invisible but potent, erupted from the crimson locks and blistered his fingers. Over time, her hair itself became a barometer of her rage. When irritated, it would seem to shimmer and writhe, as if each strand were a living filament. When truly angry, it was said that ethereal, heat-hazy serpents would uncoil from her scalp, flickering in the air like figments of a nightmare. They called her the Red Flame Witch, the Serpent Child. They feared her, and so they left her alone. Adeline, for her part, cultivated this fear. It was a shield. She lived in a small, isolated cottage at the edge of the woods, a place her parents had occupied before a swift and sudden fever had claimed them. Shed felt little grief, only a strange sense of liberation. She was an anomaly, an elemental being trapped in a world of water and wood. Her attraction was not to the gentle hearth fire, but to the untamable blaze, the all-consuming conflagration, and increasingly to the burning. Liquid fire that was venom, she began to experiment, coaxing the local vipers to strike pieces of leather, collecting the pearlescent drops of poison. She learned its nature, its speed, its devastating artistry. Her beauty was as profound as her strangeness. It was sharp and predatory, with high cheekbones, eyes the color of jade, and a full mouth that rarely smiled. This beauty, combined with the dangerous aura that surrounded her, was an intoxicating mix of the foolish or the arrogant, and none were more foolish or arrogant than Lorik, the only son of the local lord. Lorik was a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. He saw Adeline not as a person, but as a prize, a wild, beautiful thing to be tamed and possessed. He was smitten, or what passed for it in his shallow heart, a consuming obsession. He began to pursue her, leaving gifts of flowers and silks at her doorstep. Adeline left them to rot. He sent messengers with invitations to his father's keep. The messengers were often sent fleeing by a sudden, terrifying wave of heat that emanated from her cottage door. Lorik's obsession only deepened with each rejection. He spoke of her constantly to his father, Lord Valerius, a man whose ambition was matched only by his son's petulance. Valerius saw a different kind of prize. Marrying his son to the feared Serpent Child could cement his power in the region. He could control the fear she commanded. He resolved to help his son hurry her through, but with an approach born of strategy, not romance. He summoned his finest smiths and weavers. The problem, as he saw it, was Adeline's elemental nature. Her fire, her venomous aura, destroyed all it touched. They could create something for her that could withstand her. It would be a symbol of their power to contain her, a gift she could not refuse or destroy. They embarked upon a grand project, a courtly gown made from a material that could resist her flames. They sent miners to the treacherous peaks for asbestos fibers. Alchemists toiled day and night, weaving the fibers with strands of hammered gold and silver, enchanting the threads with runes of protection and cooling. It took months, a fortune in gold, and the lives of 2 alchemists who mishandled the volatile reagents. The result was a masterpiece of cold fire. A gown that shimmered like a captured sunset, heavy and cool to the touch. its fabric impervious to any flame they could conjure. Lord Valerius was immensely proud. He planned a grand feast, intending to present the gown to Adeline before the entire court, a public spectacle designed to corner her into acceptance. The invitation was delivered by a knight in full plate armor, more for his own protection than for ceremony. Adeline accepted it with a slow, unnerving smile that did not reach her jade eyes. The villagers whispered the witch was going to the keep. The Lord had finally tamed her. Adeline arrived as the sun bled across the horizon. She wore a simple dress of dark green, which made her crimson hair seem all the more vibrant. It was already beginning to stir, each strand seeming to test the air. She moved through the great hall with a predatory grace, a viper gliding through a field of startled mice. The nobles and courtiers fell silent as she passed, their gazes a mixture of awe, lust, and terror. Lord Valerius, flanked by his beaming son, stood before the throne. On a mannequin beside him was the gown, gleaming under the torchlight. Adeline, Valerius boomed, his voice full of false magnanimity. We have long admired your unique spirit. My son, Lorik, is captivated by your fiery beauty. As a token of our esteem, and to prove that our house can embrace even the most brilliant flames, we have created this for you. A garment that can withstand your passion, a symbol of our unyielding affection. Lorik stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with possessive hunger. Wear it for me, Adeline. Be my lady. Together, we shall be the most powerful force in this land. Adeline looked at the dress. She saw it not as a gift, but as a cage. A gilded, fireproof cage. They did not want to embrace her fire. They wanted to insulate themselves from it. They wanted to own her, to display her, to nullify the very essence of her power. She looked at Lorik's smug face, at Valerius' calculating eyes, at the fearful, greedy courtiers. They were fools, all of them. A profound and glacial calm settled over her. And it was in that calm that her true power awakened. Her anger was not hot. Not this time. It was a cold, precise fury. You think my power is in my fire? She asked, her voice a low hiss that carried through the silent hall. The flame is merely a warning. She raised a hand. Her crimson hair did not burst into flame. Instead, it began to writhe, to lengthen, to multiply. Ethereal serpents, woven from pure heat and malice, poured from her head, not burning but withering everything they touched. They were the color of cooling embers, their eyes like chips of obsidian. They flowed from her like a river of death. Lorik screamed as one of the serpents coiled around his arm. His flesh did not burn, it blackened, turning to ash and sloughing from bone in seconds. The venom was not of the body, but of the soul, a corrosive force that unmade what it touched. The nobles stampeded, trampling one another in their desperation to escape. Lord Valerius drew his sword, but the spectral asps swarmed him, and his polished armor turned to pitted, crumbling rust before his body dissolved within. Adeline walked calmly through the chaos. The serpent projections of her will were a storm around her, a whirlwind of silent, venomous rage. They left no scorch marks, only the desiccated, crumbling remains of what was once living. It was over in minutes. The great hall was a silent tomb, filled with statues of dust and whispers of corroded metal. She looked at the fireproof gown, still pristine on its stand, with a contemptuous flick of her wrist. She sent a single, small serpent to touch its hem. The enchanted fabric, designed to resist fire, had no defense against this deeper magic. It unraveled into a pile of gray grit. Adeline had no interest in ruling this damp, green land of fools, but she would not leave empty-handed. She walked through the silent keep, her phantom serpents dissolving back into her hair, which now lay calm and still against her shoulders. She picked out the finest jewelry from the late lattice chambers, dark, rich silk, and most importantly, maps from the Lord's study. Maps that showed the world beyond their suffocating little valley. Maps that pointed you toward the great deserts, the lands of sun and sand, the lands of true heat, of true serpents. She knew, with a certainty that resonated in her very bones, that her education had only just begun. To learn more about the fire within her, the fire of venom, of life, power, she had to go to a hotter, wilder place. She had to go home. The journey east was a crucible, The lush greens of her homeland bled away into ochre, then beige, then the stark, sun-bleached white of the salt pans. The air grew thin and hot, the sun a merciless hammer in the sky. To any other, it would have been a death sentence. To Adeline, it was a baptism. She shed the softness of her old life like a snake sheds its skin. The sun beat down on her, but instead of weakening her, it seemed to fuel the nascent power within. Her skin, once pale, took on a golden hue, and a faint, almost imperceptible pattern of iridescent scales began to manifest along her spine and forearms. Shimmering like a mirage in the heat, the serpents of the desert were drawn to her. Horned vipers, massive sand boas, and swift, deadly cobras would emerge from the rocks and dunes as she passed, not to attack, but to observe, to escort. She learned to speak their language, a sibilant tongue of clicks and hisses, a language of scent and vibration. They were her subjects, and she, their nascent queen. She learned to survive. She learned which cacti held water, how to read the stars in the vast, velvet expanse of the desert night. And she found the tomatoes. They were not the plump, watery things from her homeland. These were small, gnarled fruits that grew on tough, thorny vines in hidden, sun-scorched canyons. They were the color of arterial blood, their skin thick and leathery. The desert nomads called them serpents' hearts, and believed they were the crystallized blood of the great world serpent, Ophidian. Adeline discovered their power by accident, wounded after a fight with a monstrous dune scorpion. Its venom a searing fire in her veins. She collapsed near one of the vines, delirious. She crushed one of the fruits and applied its pulp to the wound. The effect was instantaneous. The burning pain subsided, replaced by a cool, tingling sensation. The dark veins of poison receded, and the flesh began to knit itself back together at a visible rate. It was a potent antidote, a powerful healing agent, but her intuition, honed by the desert, told her that was only half its nature. Anything that could so perfectly counteract a venom could also be used to amplify it. The serpent's hearts held the duality of life and death in their blood-red flesh. The serpent's heart is power, she whispered to the empty sands, a new mantra taking root in her soul. Her maps, and the whispers she gleaned from the few desert traders she encountered, led her to her ultimate destination, the sunken temple of Kaaman, home to the children of the scaled sun. They were not attendants of some benevolent sun goddess. They were a death cult, worshippers of Ophidian, the primordial serpent, a deity of merciless sun, eternal cycles, and silent, a deadly venom. The temple was not built, but carved downwards into a massive canyon. Its entrance, a gargantuan snake's maw. To enter, one had to walk down the gullet of the god. Adeline did so without hesitation. The air grew cooler, heavy with the scent of incense, ozone, and something else, the musky, metallic scent of thousands of snakes. The children of the scaled sun were waiting. They were gaunt figures in hooded robes, their skin tattooed with serpentine patterns. Their leader, the high priest Malachi, was an ancient man. His face a road map of wrinkles, his eyes the milky, unseeing eyes of a pit viper. He was blind, but he saw more than any other. He did not bow, but he inclined his head as she approached. "You have come," he hissed, his voice like sand skittering over rock. "The one with the hair of the dawn serpent's coils, the unbitten, the prophecy is fulfilled." Adeline soon learned that her arrival had been foretold for centuries. A woman would come from the wetlands, a child of serpents in human form, to become the avatar of their god. They did not see her as a student, but as a messiah. But even a messiah had to be tested. Her trials were brutal, designed to strip away the last vestiges of her humanity and awaken the goddess within. She was cast into the pit of whispers, a vast, dark chasm filled with every venomous snake known to man. She did not fight them. She spoke to them. She soothed them, and they coiled around her, a living, breathing armor of scales. Their collective warmth, a comforting embrace. She emerged on the third day, untouched, the undisputed queen of the pit. She was forced to navigate the labyrinth of sorrows, a maze whose walls wept a corrosive acid. Her only guide the vibration she could feel through the stone floor. She learned to use her nascent senses, to taste the air with a flick of her tongue, to feel the subtle shifts in temperature that betrayed the correct path. Her final trial was to drink the venom of Ophidian himself, a single drop of black, viscous fluid milked from a colossal, fossilized fang in the heart of the temple. Malachi warned her that it would either grant her communion with their god or dissolve her into screaming protoplasm. She drank it from a simple clay bowl. The pain was absolute, a supernova igniting behind her eyes. Her body convulsed as the divine poison rewrote her very being. She felt her bones lengthen, her muscles coil with new terrifying strength. Her vision fractured, and she saw the world in 1,000 different spectrums of something new. In the heart of that agony, he came to her. Ophidian was not a being of flesh, but of concept. He was the heat of the sun, the coldness of the grave, the infinite coil of time and space. He showed her the universe as a series of skins to be shed, of cycles of death and rebirth. He did not give her power. He unlocked the power that was her birthright. The crimson of her hair was the kiss of the ass. He communicated, not in words, but in pure understanding, the mark of his chosen avatar. When she awoke, the transformation was complete. Her jade eyes were now vertically slitted, like a cat's or a viper's. Her skin held a permanent, subtle shimmer of scales. When she spoke, there was a faint, sibilant undertone to her words. The children of the scaled sun fell to their knees. Malachi, the high priest, touched his forehead to the stone floor. "My queen," he hissed. Adeline, the snake queen, had ascended. She took the ornaments they offered her, not as gifts, but as her due. A diadem shaped like a cobra rearing to strike, its eyes set with emeralds, bracelets of petrified snake vertebrae, a great collar of beaten gold, etched with the endless, cyclical pattern of a serpent eating its own tail. She began to organize the cult, transforming them from passive worshippers into a disciplined army. She taught them the secrets of the serpent's heart. Under her guidance, they cultivated the blood-red tomatoes and hidden, irrigated gardens deep within the temple. She developed two primary concoctions. The first was the elixir of life, a potent healing salve that could mend grievous wounds and purge any poison. This was her tomato therapy. She would grant it to her most valuable warriors, allowing them to fight with reckless abandon. The second was the serpent's kiss, a paste made from the fruit mixed with the venom of the desert's deadliest snakes, a poison so virulent it could kill a man with a single touch. Her power was absolute, her control over her followers complete, but the desert was not enough. Like the Lord back in Oakhaven, she understood that true power was not just held, but wielded, and a neighboring kingdom would soon provide her with the perfect opportunity. To the west of the great desert lay the kingdom of Ethelgard, a land of jagged mountains and soaring eagles. They were a martial people who worshipped Voltar, the Sky Lord, and his consort, the eagle goddess Aquila. They were a kingdom of discipline, steel, and air, and they viewed the serpent-worshipping cultists of the desert as vermin to be exterminated. Their ruler, Tame was a stern, hawk-faced man who saw Adeline's rise as a direct threat to his dominion. An army was dispatched to the desert's edge, with orders to march to the sunken temple and cleanse it with fire and steel. Adeline watched their approach not with fear, but with a cold, predatory excitement. This would be the first true test of her new reign. Her army was smaller, but she had the desert itself as an ally, and powers the Ethelgardians could not comprehend. The battle took place on a vast, flat salt pan, the sun beating down with a fury that favored Adeline's forces. The Ethelgardian army was a sight to behold, a gleaming river of steel, their formations perfect, their eagle-crested helms shining. They marched in lockstep, a testament to order and discipline. Adeline's army was their antithesis. The children of the scaled sun moved with a fluid, unsettling grace, their dark robes making them seem like shadows on the glaring white salt. Behind them, summoned by Adeline's will, came the true host of the desert, a living carpet of snakes, tens of thousands strong, their scales glittering in the sun. King Theron, watching from a command chariot, puffed. They send vermin against steel. Advance. The Ethelgardian legions charged, their war cries echoing across the pan. Adeline stood at the front of her forces, a serene, terrifying figure in her golden ornaments. She let them come. When they were halfway across the pan, she raised a single hand. From beneath the salt crust, 100 massive sand boas, each as thick as a tree trunk, erupted, their huge bodies shattering the Ethelgardian formations. Chaos ripped through the disciplined ranks, the legions faltered, and in that moment, Adeline's cultists attacked. They did not fight like soldiers, they weaved and ducked, their curved blades darting out the hamstring, to slice tendons, to open throats. Each of them carried pouches of the serpent's kiss, their blades coated in the deadly paste. A mere scratch was a death sentence. Adeline moved through the battle like a goddess of war, an Ethelgardian knight, a champion by the look of his ornate armor. Broke through and charged her, his lance leveled. She did not move, she simply watched him, her slitted eyes unnervingly calm. The air around her shimmered with heat, and a dozen of the ethereal, venomous serpents from her hair lashed out. They passed through his shield as if it were smoke, and his armor corroded into dust before he could even cry out. He and his horse collapsed into a pile of ash and bone. This was the power of her anger, her fury made manifest. Every time a combatant fell, friend or foe, the scent of blood and death filled the air, and her rage would surge. With each death, a random Ethelgardian officer would suddenly clutch his throat. A spectral viper coiled around his neck, the invisible burn of her fury claiming him. Simultaneously, her own champion, a giant of a man named Kale, who fought with a massive stone hammer, would feel her power surge into him. His eyes would glow with a faint green light, and with a roar, he would smash through a shield wall, his strength amplified by her divine rage. Her healers moved behind the lines, their faces veiled, carrying clay pots of the blood-red paste. This was her tomato therapy in action. When one of her cultists fell, grievously wounded, they would descend upon them, smearing the elixir of life onto the wound. The flesh would knit, the bleeding would stop, and the warrior would rise again, not just healed, but invigorated. The elixir carried a trace of stimulating venom, a gift from Adeline that heightened their senses and fueled their aggression. They fought with a renewed, terrifying ferocity, a damage boost born from a miracle cure. King Theron watched in horror as his immaculate army was being dismantled by a force that defied every law of warfare he knew. His soldiers were dying from scratches, his formations were broken by desert beasts, and at the center of it all was the silent, red-haired woman, a figure of impossible power. Mages, he roared, bring her down, silence her. A cadre of Skylord battle mages moved to the front. They began a chant, their hands weaving intricate patterns in the air. The sky darkened as they gathered their power. They unleashed a bolt of pure sound, a concussive blast designed to stun and shatter the mind of any living creature. The blast washed over Adeline. For a moment, her vision blurred. The sound a physical blow, but the power of Ophidian, the essence of the serpent's hearts she consumed daily, had fortified her being. Her innate resistance to such control, her enhanced immunity, was absolute. She barely flinched, the sonic attack dissipating against her will like mist. The mages stared in disbelief. With a graceful, almost lazy gesture, Adeline pointed at them. The ground at their feet began to rise. Vipers, black as night, erupted from the salt and swarmed them, their fangs finding every gap in their robes. Their screams were mercifully brief. The Ethelgardian army broke. The sight of their mages being consumed by a tide of snakes shattered their morale completely. They threw down their weapons and ran. A panicked rout. Adeline let them run. She had won. She walked the battlefield, the salt stained with blood and the black ash of her victims. King Theron lay near his overturned chariot, a dozen vipers still coiled around his body. Adeline nudged his eagle-crested helmet with her foot. Iron stone, predictable. They had never stood a chance against the subtle, patient, and absolute power of Venom. She returned to her temple, not as a cult leader, but as a conqueror. The lands of Ethelgard were now open to her. Her domain would expand. Her legend would grow, whispered in terror from the wet, mild valleys of her birth to the highest mountain peaks. She sat upon a new throne, carved from the black obsidian of the Ethelgardian mountains, inlaid with the fossilized bones of great desert serpents. She was Adeline, the Serpent Queen, avatar of the scaled sun. She had found her home, she had found her people, and she had found her truth. She looked out at the setting sun, which painted the desert sands in hues of crimson and gold, the color of her hair, the color of her power. Fire is power, she said softly, her sibilant voice a whisper of promise and threat. The fire of the sun, the fire of life, and the cold,